Barrister and legal director at UK Lawyers for Israel. Good morning to you. I know that you heard some of that report going out. In terms of conflict, is there something different this time round in Israel? Does it present to you as being peculiar this time round?
Good morning. The first thing that we have to understand, Gillian, is that a spontaneous escalation. This has been planned by Hamas, which has been stockpiling missiles and rebuilding its terror network with Iranian backing ever since the last conflict in 2014. And we need to be absolutely clear about the origins of this latest round of violence. This arises from an internal conflict between Palestinian terrorist groups, Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Fatah, an internal conflict between Hamas leaders Mohammed Daif and Yahya Sinwar was brewing tensions, and this was then sparked by the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas's decision to cancel Palestinian elections, the first Palestinian elections in 16 years, because he believed he was going to lose. He is currently in his 16th year of a 4-year term. And of course, the month of Ramadan is a usually tense time due to intense incitement by Arab leaders. And this manifested itself incredibly strongly on social media this time round. Over the course of this month, this latest round of violence began with Jews being targeted randomly in Jerusalem by gangs of Arabs. This escalated very quickly, encouraged over social media, to riots, first on the Temple Mount, where Palestinians amassed stones, stone slabs, rocks and fireworks in order to...
The Palestinians, sorry to interrupt, the Palestinians will say that this latest incident of violence was precipitated by the events at the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Indeed, and it's at Al-Aqsa that these munitions were amassed, including stones and fireworks, in order to fire upon and attack Jewish worshippers in the Western Wall Plaza just below Al-Aqsa, and to attack Israeli police who contained the violence to the best of their ability. But of course, all of this is the perfect excuse for Hamas to start firing thousands of rockets onto Israeli civilians because of the internal power struggles that I mentioned. Now, I think it's crucially important that we stress the indiscriminate nature of Hamas rockets that are being fired, because 30% of them, an estimated 30%, are falling short in Gaza, killing Palestinian civilians. Yes, Gillian, Hamas is killing its own people, and devastatingly, this is nothing new. It is also...
What evidence do you have of that?
Well, you don't have to take it from me. You can take it from the Palestinian Al-Mazin Center, based in Gaza, which reported the deaths of the children in the Al-Masri family before the Israeli response in Gaza had begun. And subsequently, there was also another report by Defense for Children International, the Palestine branch, that reported 8 civilians had died from another Hamas rocket, including 2 children. So those...
I just want to say, I started the interview by asking you whether you thought that this was particularly different, this confrontation, and we've seen some people quite shocked for the first time that Israeli Arabs and Israeli Jews that have previously lived happily side by side, there's confrontation now, and we're seeing fights breaking out in the street, people attacked that had previously lived side by side. What do you think needs to be done to restore the balance that has existed?
Well, at this point, unfortunately, it seems that we're quite a long way into the violence. There's been a substantial amount of criticism that the Israeli government didn't nip this in the bud last month, when 36 rockets were fired on the 24th of April. The advice from the military at the time was to respond to prevent an escalation, but the Israeli politicians opted for restraint, and this is where we are now. You're absolutely right that the level of violence across towns, mixed cities, Akko, Lod, Ramleh, is unprecedented. And that has also been driven substantially by the intense social media incitement. We've had...
Natasha, I'm afraid we are running out of time, but in the previous hour I did speak to a Palestinian writer in Jerusalem and asked him whether he would condemn the attacks from Hamas, and he replied by saying that, you know, we never ask whether Israelis condemn the attacks by the Israeli Defense Force on Gaza. So I'm putting that question to you, as I promised him I would. Do you condemn the attacks, even though they might be retaliatory, by the Israeli Defense Force?
Well, Gillian, we hear people say both sides have to be prevailed upon, that there is only one side that can stop this. It is the side that started it, Hamas. And we have seen every round of conflict, when Hamas stops firing rockets at Israeli civilians, calm is restored. I have to stress that the Israeli strikes, the targeted strikes, do the utmost to prevent civilian casualties, unlike the tactics that Hamas used. The lengths that the Israeli army goes to protect civilian life is unparalleled in the history of warfare. And you will hear that from professional soldiers from other Western armies.
Natasha, I think we've got your answer there, although it wasn't direct. But thank you. Good to speak to you this morning.
Thank you, Gillian.